In my previous video, I built some 10mm scale terrain to see if I would enjoy it. This time, I'm going to try and play a solo game of Warhammer Fantasy Battles at this reduced scale to see if it's doable. I will be using the 4th edition rules from way back in 1992 because nostalgia, and though I am an Empire boy at heart, the High Elves vs Goblin lineup is too classic to resist. Since I don't really have any 10mm terrain yet, I'm using these doodles on a sheet of paper to represent the battlefield. Don't expect any nice terrain on this video or nice miniatures, it's just 100% gameplay. The terrain was rolled off the terrain table in the rulebook, and I got 3 hills, one of which has an impassable cliff on one side, a building with some extra walls, some woodland, and some swampy ground. Except for the cliff, the hills will be treated as open ground, and just give elevated positions, while the swamp and the wood reduce movement by half. The goblins won the roll to pick off the side, so they took the one with the most hills. This would prevent the elves from taking the best shooting positions. Both sides are 1500 point armies from the 4th edition lists. The elf general is riding with the Silverhelm cavalry, and the goblin warlord and his battle standard bearer are marching with the large goblin unit. And with that, let's get into the account of the first battle of Sodding Hill. The elves won the roll-off to see who gets to start first, and they took it. Being able to get some shots in early and thin down the goblin horde could make all the difference. Not much movement going on initially. The elf archers on the left flank headed forward to occupy the building, while the Reaver Knights on the right flank rode around the woodland. Everyone else held position. In the first shooting phase, the archers in the building let fly at the goblin archers opposite them. Normally they only need 3 or better to hit, but they moved astern and are shooting at a distant target, so they needed 5s. Only 4 hit and 1 failed to injure the target, leaving 3 goblins down. The bolt thrower opened up at the troll, shooting 4 bolts and wounding it once. The troll failed to regenerate, and since it lost more than 25% of its health, it took a panic test. The troll wavered, but thanks to the reroll from the battle standard it held, and that was it for the elf turn. The goblins started their first turn. Because they're so rowdy, they have to take an animosity test at the start of each of their turns. This time they were mostly behaved, and only one of the spear units failed the test. They had a disagreement over what to have for lunch, and the unit got stuck while they worked it out. The rest of the goblin horde surged forward, hoping to take down the elven line with their superior numbers. In the shooting phase, the Doomdiver catapults targeted the elven spearmen and the bolt thrower. The first one went a little short, while the other one scattered right on top of the Phoenix Guard, flattening 5 of them. This was too much for the elite elven warriors, who failed their panic test and decided to head back home. End of turn 1 for the goblins. Top of turn 2 for the High Elves, and first things first, the bolt thrower crew had to take a panic test because they were within 4 of a fleeing friendly unit. They rolled under their leadership of 8, so they held. Next, the Phoenix Guard tried to regroup, but they rolled a 12, way over their leadership of 8, and nope, they're way off the table. The goblins got their first taste of victory points. The Reaver Knights continued to sneak around the right flank, while the rest of the army held position. In the shooting phase, the archers in the building shot the goblin archers again, and though they forced the panic test, the goblins held. The bolt thrower fired at the giant. It was an easy shot. With a large target at close range, they needed a 2 or better to hit. I rolled a 1, obviously. The remaining archers also shot at the giant, but despite several arrows finding their mark, none of them did any significant damage. Turnover for the elves. The second turn for the goblins started with battlefield-wide chaos as 2 spearmen units and the wolf riders started squabbling among themselves. The rest of the horde advanced as the archers on the cliff turned to get the Reaver Knights into view. Despite the volley of arrows, 2 Reaver Knights survived and managed to pass their panic test. The Doomdivers targeted the spearmen and the bolt thrower again. This time the first Doomdiver was right on target, squashing 4 spearmen. The second one misfired with a wild shot and squashed one of the crew on its neighbour. This was a mistake in reality because the distance rolled for wild shots should be multiplied by 10. But either way, end of turn 2 for the goblins. High Elf turn 3. The surviving Reaver Knight made their way around the cliff. There weren't enough of them to do any serious damage, but they could still march block and deny battlefield quarter, if they survived. In the meantime, the spearmen advanced to intercept the chariot, and the Silverhelms took a flanking position. If anything charged the spearmen, they would be able to charge it right back, assuming the spearmen held. This time the bolt thrower managed to hit the giant, but the massive brute just shrugged off the hit. On the left flank, the archers in the building feathered 3 of the wolf riders, causing the rest to flee from the battlefield. The archers in the center shot at the giant again, this time managing to wound him twice. This forced a panic test, but he held thanks to the general. End of turn 3 for the elves and things are looking dicey. Goblin turn 3. The archers on the cliff had an argument about whether they should go after the 2 Reaver Knights, but this turned into a brawl and they were stuck for a turn. On the other hand, the rest of the horde smelled blood in the air and focused on the elves. The giant charged the archers, who opted to stand and shoot, and inflicted another 2 wounds on him. This was enough for another panic test, which was passed on the reroll from the battle standard. The chariots charged spearmen, who received the charge. Meanwhile, the pump wagon only rolled a 4 for its random movement. The snotlings operating the pump were getting tired, so it just positioned itself to threaten the Silverhelms. In the shooting phase, the goblin archers on the left fired at the bolt thrower, causing only slight damage. With one doom diver down for a turn due to loss of crew, the second one shot at the bolt thrower again and misfired. Again. This time the result was bounce, which fired the hapless doom diver right into the rear of the goblin spearmen, squishing 4 of them. In the first hand-to-hand combat phase of the game, the chariot crashed into the elven spearmen, killing 6 of them. One of the spearmen managed to kill one of the goblins crewing the chariot, but the slaughter was too much and the spearmen broke. Meanwhile, the giant started to jump up and down on the elven archers, crushing 9 of them. The lone survivor struck back, leaving the giant on his last wound, but like the spearmen, he was forced to retreat. This made the crew of the bolt thrower panic and run off as the giant chased the lone remaining archer off the battlefield and the chariot ran down the fleeing spearmen. Turn over for the goblins and the situation was looking good. High Elf turn 4 and there isn't much of an army left to speak of. The Silverhelms prepare to charge the smaller goblin unit and the bolt thrower crew regrouped successfully. The archers holed up in the building shot over the heads of the goblin archers, taking down 5 goblin spearmen. This forced a panic test, but the goblins held once again thanks to the nearby warlord and his battle standard. Across the battlefield, the Silverhelms did better, cutting down 6 goblins with no losses. The sight of the elven heavy cavalry running down the spearmen terrified the goblin archers, who ran for the edge of the field. End of turn for the elves. Goblin turn 4. Having witnessed the destruction of their neighbouring unit, the warlord's regiment went on strike for battle herb benefits, locking it down for the turn. Meanwhile, the goblin archers attempted to storm the building the elves were holding. The pump wagon managed a 180 turn to line up with the Silverhelms once again, while the giant returned to the field, and the fleeing archers managed to regroup. The shooting phase was not very productive, with both doom divers completely failing to hit anything interesting. In the hand-to-hand combat phase, the elves easily drove off the goblins trying to storm their building, making them flee. End of turn for the goblins. High Elf turn 5 and things were still grim. The Silverhelms were too close to the goblins to march, but they wheeled around to prepare to charge into the goblin flank. The Reaver Knights rode in front of the goblin archers. A dangerous move, but one that would prevent them from charging into the Silverhelms. The elves really needed to get rid of the warlord's regiment, so they shot everything they had into it, despite the giant being right on top of the bolt thrower. Between them, they brought down 4 goblins, not nearly enough to force a panic test. Turn over for the elves. Goblin turn 5. All the goblins passed their animosity test, and the fleeing archers regrouped. The giant charged the bolt thrower, which elected to flee, but was caught by the pursuing giant. This was a mistake. I should have used the giant's charge range rather than rolling, though the end result was pretty much the same. The goblin spears wheeled around the wall to prepare an assault on the elves next turn. In the center, the warlord's unit used the regimental musician to sound the reform. They passed their leadership test and turned around so they could receive the Silverhelm charge rather than take a flank attack. The archers on the right fired into the Reaver Knights. Despite the volley, 1 Reaver Knight survived and passed his panic test, holding position, and with no hand-to-hand combat, that was the end of the goblin turn. 6th and last High Elf turn. The Silverhelms charged into the goblin spears, while the lone Reaver rode into cover. I forgot that the cliff there was impassable, but he did have enough movement to ride around it. The archers shot at the giant, and despite 9 arrows hitting him, not one of them managed to bring him down. The Silverhelms and their steeds brought down 5 goblins, taking 1 casualty in return. Even with the reroll for the battle standard, the Goblins failed their break test, sending a wave of panic through the army. The bulk of the Goblin army disintegrated as the Silver Helms chased down the fleeing Goblins, and the turn ended for the Elves. The sixth and last turn for the Goblins started with panic tests. The Chariot was within 4 of the fleeing Troll, causing it to panic. The Giant was also within 4 of the fleeing Goblins and also freaked out. The Troll and the Chariot somehow rallied, but the Giant and the Spearmen just kept running as fast as their feet could carry them. The Goblin Archer Spyfield tried to kill the last Reaver, but he was definitely tougher than most Elves, as 2 arrows hit him but failed to injure. The Doom Divers tried to splat the Silver Helms again. One went wide, but the other one misfired with a bounce, and brought down another Elven Horseman, and that ended the turn and the game. Both the Goblins and the Elves had 1 uncontested table quarter, giving them 1 victory point each. The Elves had also captured the Goblin Battle Standard and slain the Goblin General, so that's 2 bonus points to them, and the rest was down to the points value of the destroyed and fleeing units. Tallying them up, the Elves won a definitive but very expensive victory. Mistakes were made, but playing the scaled-down version of the game is definitely fun. I intentionally didn't use stuff like Goblin Fanatics and the 4th edition magic system, as they didn't really make sense for a solo game, but I can see how they would work. My next step will be to make a board and some terrain in this scale. In the meantime, if you want to see other terrain builds, check out this playlist right here. Bye!